Assalamualaikum and every good evening to Semasri. I am Nur Akila binti Omar Rusli. Today, I want to present about utilitarian theory of ethics. My part is a contribution of the utilitarian theory of ethics. As we know, the most influential technological ethical theories. Utility means a satisfaction, pleasure who the people receive from the consuming a service stated by Tucker in 2015. I took from your notes. Principle of utilitarian divided by four. The first is a consequentialism. Second is hedonism. The third is maximalism, and the last of it is a universalism. There are two forms of utilitarian, as in my slide is have about this form. The first is classical and the second is rule of rule utilitarianism by John Stuart Mill. The first explains about support of moral relativism rather than moral objective. The second is explain about complying with the rules. As we know, it's a part of this topic, and that's all. Thank you.
Jeremy Bentham was born on 15 February 1748 and he passed away in 1832. He was the first of the classical utilitarians, driven by a genuine desire for social reform. Bentham wanted to be as much as involved in law, politics, economics, and as abstract philosophy. Bentham developed his moral theory of utilitarianism on the foundation of type of hedonic thinking described in two sections. For Jeremy Bentham, the only thing that determines the value of life, or indeed the value of an event or action, is the amount of pleasure contained in that life, or the amount of pleasure produced as a result of the event or action. Bentham is an hedonic utilitarian. This belief in hedonism, however, was not something that Bentham took to be unjustified or arbitrated, for his hedonism could be empirically justified by the evidence in the world in its favor. According to Bentham, nature has mankind under the governance of two sovereign masters, pain and pleasure. It is for them alone to point out what we ought to do, as well as to determine what we shall do. Bentham moves from this empirical claim about two factors that guide our behavior to normative claim about how we ought to live. He creates a moral theory based on the bringing about more pleasure and less pain. The first understanding of utilitarianism is also crucial to understand what is it meant by the term utility. Bentham defines it as the property in any object where it tends to produce benefit and advantages or pleasure, good or happiness, or to prevent the happening of mischief, pain, evil, or unhappiness. Utility is thus promoted when the pleasure is promoted and when unhappiness is avoided. Bentham's commitment to hedonism means for him that goodness is just an increase in pleasure and evilness or unhappiness is just an increase in pain or decrease in pleasure. With this understanding of utility in mind, Bentham commits himself to the principle of utility. By the principle of utility is meant that principle of which approves and disapproves of every action whatsoever according to the tendency of which it appears to have argument or diminish the happiness of the party whose interest is in the question. Or what is it the same thing, in the other words, to promote or oppose that happiness? In effect, the principle simply says that promoting utility defines in the term of pleasure it is to be approved of, and reducing utility is to be disapproved of. The principle is backed by a commitment of hedonism underpins the central utilitarian claim by Bentham. We can rephrase what Bentham himself calls his fundamental axiom as a requirement to promote the greatest pleasure for the greatest number of people in order to act normally. Thank you.
The contribution of utilitarian theory to society. Number one, we get to base our primary focus on the satisfaction of society. The main reason that makes the utilitarian theory famous is based on the fact that the theory based its primary focus of existence on the contentment of society. By studying people across the globe, very few are experiencing this kind of emotions. It's vital to note that people's happiness is based on their access to financial resource and employment, with utilitarian offers an option to this type of issue. According to utilitarian, the contentment of those people can be obtained by mostly imposing the direct actions. For example, ourselves could be decide to improve the unemployment rate and on the other hand improve the household income. Number two, the theory can be easily implemented. With a society that functions with the utilitarian foundation, contentment is the only process to focus on in its implementation. The process involves getting into a specific larger group in that society and working with them to control the positive and negative result of each choice performance as dictated by the principle. Number three, utilitarianism is a secular system that is mainly centered on humanity. When looking at our life from a societal perspective, the most satisfaction struggle in our day-to-day activities, our vision in spirituality. According to the several resources, it's estimated that currently more than 4,100 religions are being practiced across the globe. Number four, the theory seeks to achieve the greatest good for society. Everyone today dreams of a perfect world with equal opportunities and happiness, but with the numerous differences within our subgroups, this goal is impossible to achieve. Nevertheless, with the utilitarian principle, which is mainly based on the larger part as a group for pleasure rather than everyone, we may bring maximum joys level into our life. Number five, the theory teaches us it's wrong to harm other people. According to this utilitarian theory, our clarity of morality is based on the general community perspective rather than the individual outlook. It also gives individual a platform for airing his or her opinions, which are discussed by the city before being accepted into society.
Hi sir, good afternoon to my dear lecturer Mr. Mazri and to my fellow classmates. And now it's my turn to talk about the development of utilitarian. Utilitarian holds the most ethical choice that produces the greatest good for the greatest number. Utilitarian is also the most common approach in business ethics because the way it accounts the cost and also the benefits. The application of making a decision is based on what will benefit the majority. The development of utilitarian affirms that pleasure is the beginning and end of a good life. We recognize pleasure as the first good, being natural to us, and it is from pleasure that we begin every choice and avoidance. It is also to pleasure that we return using it as the standard by which we judge every good. Pleasure is clearly an important motivator in our lives, and the most moral philosophers find it at least some place for a pleasure within their theories. Now we will talk about the three theories, which is the philosophical approaches when people talk about these three areas, they are usually discussing an area of ethics known as normative ethics, or the process of considering and determining ethical behavior. First, we will talk about the utilitarian ethics. The definition is the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And the example will be, if you're choosing an ice cream for yourself, the utilitarian view is that you should choose the flavor that will give you the most pleasure and maximize your pleasure. And the second will be the deontological ethics. The definition will be the idea that people should be treated with dignity and respect. And the example will be, deontology is based on the autonomy of the individual. Similar to this autonomy and freedom from enrochment, that public relations seeks to be considered excellent. And the third will be the virtue ethics. The virtue ethics definition will considerably what virtue makes a good public relations professionals. And the example will be virtue of honesty, the utmost importance to a good public relations professionals. Then all decisions should be made ethically to ensure honesty is preserved. And finally, these three theories of ethics form the foundation of normative ethics conversations. It is important that public relations professionals also understand to apply these three concepts to the actual practice of their profession. Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir.
I'm Shobna from BBA City 9. We are from Ethics in Business subject. We have given a theory to explain in detail, which is utilitarian theory. Among my group members, I've chosen a question to explain do utilitarian theory can be applied in Malaysia. Based on my opinion, I would definitely say yes, as utilitarian theory is an ethical theory that determines right or wrong by focusing on the outcomes. As you can see, this has been proven during 2018 election, where an existing government has been taken over by another government. Because of the majority from Malaysia citizen, they have decided to have a change and benefit from it. Besides, whatever makes you happy and may opposes action that cause unhappiness or harm if it results in the happiness of the greatest number of people in a society or as a group. As an example, even though our Prime Minister aware that Malaysia is under budgeting, but he have managed to prepare budget accordingly to help those citizens out there who are unemployed, also who are in the hardship. Where he have provided funds from government in the name of Bantuan Sara Hidup and also Bantuan Prihatin Nasional in order to lesser their burdens during this pandemic.